Welcome back to Trek on the Seven Seas. This is episode number 15, and in this episode, we're going to go over week 15 of the Night Transportation Lease Operator Program. We stay on the West Coast this week, and we have a pretty bad settlement, mostly because of a high fuel bill and then some IFTA taxes that came due. If you are new to this channel, welcome. I started this channel in order to show exactly what truck drivers make. We started as a company driver working for Night Transportation, and now we have moved on to a lease operator. I show all of the loads I take, all of the revenue, all of the expenses, and I compile all of this information and I put it into a spreadsheet that I share with you at the end of every video. So if this is a topic that interests you, follow the channel. But last episode we left off in Reno, Nevada, so we were dropping a load in Reno, Nevada. I then actually went home for a little bit and took a couple days off, and as I took a couple days off, I forgot to put the truck in battery mode, and as a result, so I had to call mobile. There wasn't anything nearby that could fix it. So, mobile guy from TA coming out here. Whoops. Okay, so we dropped this one out in Victorville, California. This is a drop-in hook at a Mars Pet Care. And then we got dispatched on another one picking up in Ontario, California, and headed to Las Vegas, Nevada. Let's go. That was a ridiculously tight lot. And we're also in the ghetto, so I'm gonna make it quick. Dropped in Vegas, picked up in Vegas, and we're headed to Buckeye. Let's go. So we dropped the load out here in Phoenix, I think I said Buckeye, but it's actually Phoenix we're dropping it in. So we dropped it in Phoenix out here. Then we got dispatched on another one picking up in Buckeye, same Sam's DC that we pick up quite a bit at, and we're headed to Las Vegas. However, they wanted me to grab another load in the Phoenix yard, so we're going to go to the Phoenix yard real quick, grab that, and it's headed to the Buckeye facility. So we're just doing a quick pickup, headed to the Buckeye facility, drop and hook, and headed to Vegas. Let's go. All right, had another blowout. Side of the road this time. Yeah, okay, so leaving Phoenix, I was on the 303, well, on the interchange of the 303 and the 10, and blew a tire. Made a really loud noise, and pretty sure somebody was following too closely to me and probably got some, he got some of it, but that's why you don't follow so closely. But I don't know, he drove off, so I didn't get it on film really, because it's, you know, back area there. But it was a trailer tire, outer, and super loud out there. I put the triangles out, called up the shop, and now we're just waiting. So hopefully they can get someone out here relatively quickly and we can get on our way to Las Vegas, but we'll see. So let's wait. Okay, so we dropped this one out at the Sam's Club in Las Vegas, Nevada. So I think we've done this load probably about 10 times at this point. So dropped it out here, and then we're gonna pick up a load in the Las Vegas yard, and it's headed to Grantsville, Utah, which is Salt Lake City. Probably gonna get some Chipotle first because I'm quite hungry, and then next to the Chipotle, there's a Great Clips. So I'm probably gonna get a haircut as well. Anyways, let's go to Salt Lake. Actually, never mind. So the load going to Grantsville, Utah got delayed because the driver who was dropping it in the Las Vegas terminal, don't know, he got delayed somehow, and I wasn't able to get it until the next day. And as a result, the Sam's Club load is going to be the last load on the Paycheck. So with that said, it's spreadsheet time. For week 15, we did 5 loads, and in those 5 loads, we got 1,566 miles. We were paid a total of $2,839 for an average of $1.81 per mile. Fuel expenses, we fueled up 4 times, and in those 4 times, we paid $1,104 for an average of 71 cents per mile. There were no maintenance expenses this week. Other expenses, fuel tax, $763, MRP, $78, Qualcomm, $13, Bobtail, $692, physical damage, $69, occupational accident policy, $34, permits, $42, Pre-pass, $350, truck payment, $450, scales, $27, fuel mile tax, again, $46, lease security deposit, $100, fuel mile tax refund of $263, for a total of $1,371 for an average of 88 cents per mile. Week 15 totals. Total expenses were $2,476 for an average of $1.58 per mile. Revenue was $2,839 for an average of $1.81 per mile. Settlement was $363 for an average of 23 cents per mile. Total since starting the program, we have driven a total of 35,044 miles. Total expenses were $37,601 for an average of $1.07 per mile, and that is my cost per mile right there. Total revenue was $60,311 for an average of $1.72 per mile. Net cash flow was $22,709 for an average of 65 cents per mile, and if you minus the lease security deposit, it goes up to 72 cents per mile. If I had been a company driver during this period, I would have made $18,923 at 54 cents per mile. And if I had been an owner-operator who owned his truck outright, I would have made $30,759 for an average of 88 cents per mile. Averages and other information. Average weekly paycheck is $1,419. Average weekly miles is 2,190. Total fuel cost is $19,282 for an average of 55 cents per mile. Total maintenance cost is $3,464 for an average of 10 cents per mile. If I kept this up for a 52-week period, I'd make $73,807 and get a total of 113,000 miles. We've been employed 112 days for 16 weeks of employment, taking 14 days off, 98 days on duty, taking 67 total loads, and the average load length is 523 miles, and the total security deposit that I've contributed so far is $2,650. Alright, moving on to the weekly pay graph. This just compares company pay versus lease pay and the volatility of each. So red is lease, company's blue, and as you can see, the lease tends to be far more volatile, so stayed relatively constant first month or so. Then I had this bonanza week where I just made way more as a lease driver. Then it stayed relatively constant until the last couple weeks, which have been kind of all over the place. So I actually lost money this week. That was actually a couple weeks ago. And then last week I did really well, especially when you compare it to a company driver. But then of course this week, the red line right here is lease. And as you can see, if I had been a company driver during this period, I actually would have made more as a company driver versus a lease driver. So this just shows the volatility of being a lease operator, and it also shows volatility of being an owner operator effectively. And it just shows how much more volatile being a lease operator is. And yeah, just good information for you. And moving on to total company pay versus total lease pay. This just shows total pay in aggregate of a company driver versus a lease driver. Same thing, lease is red, company's blue. And if you scroll over the points here, it'll show each week in aggregate of a company driver and each week in aggregate of a lease driver. And it just shows it comparing side by side who is doing better, a company driver or a lease driver. So far, as a lease operator, I have done better. So I have made $22,709 as a lease driver. And if I had been a company driver, I only would have made $18,923. And that last data point is also right here. So just so you know, it's right there as well. And it just shows how much more or less I'm making as a lease driver. And yeah, just the visual representation of the pay in aggregate of a company versus a lease driver. And again, just more information for you. Okay, yeah, so moving on to just caveats this week. One of the big caveats here is the fuel expense. So if you remember last week, my fuel expense, I'll just scroll up for you, was 26 cents per mile, which is insanely low and not realistic at all, especially when you drive on the West Coast and fuel is like $4.50, $5 a gallon. So I kind of expected this to happen because basically what happened here is one of these fuel ups, I don't know which one, was basically a fuel up for last week's run-in, but it hit this paycheck. So I must have ended last week on basically no fuel and then fueled up on this week's paycheck, and this is why this fuel bill is so high. One of these, might be this one actually, was done on last week's paycheck, but it was, it hit this week's paycheck, but it was for last week's fuel. So as a result, my fuel bill is extremely high. My average is 55 cents per mile, but right here I'm averaging 71 cents per mile. So that's a lot. And another thing that hurt me was this fuel tax right here. So the fuel tax, how it works at Night Transportation is they track all of your fuel, your IFTA basically, and they discharge it at the end of the month, how much more or less you should be getting paid. And quick overview of IFTA: if you drive in high tax states like California, you have to pay more in taxes, and the taxes are integrated in with the fuel price in California. So if you're driving through California and you fuel up in California, you basically won't owe anything in your fuel tax, in your IFTA tax refund, or you might actually get a little bit of a refund. So that's how that works. And if you drive in low tax states, you will pay less. And if you fuel up in low tax states, it kind of works the same way, except it does work the same way. However, if you do something what I've been doing, which is fueling up in Nevada and then driving all over California, but constantly fueling up in Nevada, basically I did this for an entire month. So I would leave Las Vegas, and right before I leave Las Vegas, I fuel up at the terminal, and then I would drive all the way through like California. So I drive from like Las Vegas to Los Angeles to Sacramento and then into Reno. And I figured out I could pretty much do that on just one tank of gas. So I'd been filling up in Las Vegas and then driving all the way through California without fueling up in California. And as a result, I didn't pay nearly enough taxes, which I don't mind because I don't want to fuel up in California because there's just extra fees as well. But I did this basically the entire month, where I was fueling up in Nevada and then driving through California to some extent, and then driving out of California and then fueling up either in Nevada again or possibly Arizona. And I did that the entire month. So as a result, I didn't pay nearly enough taxes on my fuel. And as a result, I got whacked with a $700 fuel bill at the end of this month. And I'm actually not even upset about it because I didn't have to pay any fuel tax, or I didn't have to fuel up in California. So I hope that makes sense. The IFTA system is extremely complicated, and there are videos on it. But yeah, long story short is I never fuel up in California, but I constantly drive in California. As a result, I just keep going backwards on my IFTA dues, and as a result, at the end of the month, Night Transportation automatically calculates this, and they realize I owed like $700, and that's what they charge me there. So that's what that's about. And then it does other weird things. So this here right here is what they charge. This is what they expect you to pay at the end of the month. So like about 3 cents per mile or something like that. But because I'm just constantly fueling up in Nevada and then running all the way through California, it's not enough. Like I should owe, like that needs to tick up because I'm just not fueling up in California even though I'm running in it. And yeah, so that's what is normally charged, and that usually covers it. But it's just not covering it for me because I'm just not fueling up in California. And then I got a refund here, which I'm not sure why it does that. I'm sure there's a very complex calculation, but I got a refund of $263. So effectively, I paid $500 of fuel tax for the month of January, actually, is what it was. So that's what that's about, and that's probably going to keep happening as long as I'm running California. Yeah, I'm just not going to fuel up there if I can avoid it. And if I end up getting whacked with the $700 fuel bill, so be it. And I called up the lease coordinator, and I was kind of asking about that. I'm like, hey, is that sure it's right? He's like, yeah, man, it's right. He goes, yeah, that's actually he said, that's actually the highest one I've ever seen. So, because I'm literally fueling up in Vegas, and then I'm driving all the way through California. I can go from Vegas to Los Angeles to Sacramento and then to Reno on 1 tank of fuel. I figured this out. And that's what I've been doing. So I'm just running like 1,000 miles almost all the way through California all day, every day, and not fueling up in California. So I'm just getting whacked with this bill at the end of the month. And I think that happened last month, and I just sort of ignored it. I think it was a little less, but this one was particularly severe because I ran hard in California, but I didn't fuel up there. So that's what's happened there, and I don't have any regrets. I regret nothing. So I'm still not fueling up there. So, but yeah, that sucked a little bit. But anyways, that's what happened there, and that was a huge expense, and that was that was a big expense. So fuel tax and then fuel kind of screwed me over this week. If I don't have that $500 effectively charge, and then I do a little better management, I guess, with fuel, this would go up significantly. But since I did that and I got the charge, we're looking at 23 cents per mile, which is obviously abysmal and terrible. And but there's week 15. Pretty bad week. Not much to say. So far, averaging 65 cents per mile. Without the security deposit, it's 72 cents per mile. You can judge whether that's worth it or not. Again, I'm just posting the numbers here, and I'll keep them posted. I'll keep them coming. One update, I forgot to update this last week. The ABS light that I had fixed a couple weeks ago, it did come back on, but then it went back off real quick. So I'm not sure what's going on with it. I think next time I bring it in for a B service, I'm just going to tell them to, hey, just replace that sensor, the ABS sensor A, and that should do it. But it did actually flick back on, but then it went off after a little while, and it hasn't come on since. I'm still rolling, but it does appear to be mostly fixed, kind of. But I'm not sure. I'm definitely gonna have them replace it, but everything seems to be working just fine. So, there's no lights on it, and they said they fixed it, came back on, then went off. So I'm just I'll probably have them replace it next time I move in. I go and take it in, but it doesn't seem to be an issue at the moment. So another note, I've been getting a lot of requests from people asking to edit this, and the answer is no, you cannot edit this, because if you edit this on the Google Sheets, it will be public. So if you go in and like, oh, I don't like that number, and you just delete that number, everyone's going to see that, and you're going to torpedo the entire sheet. So you cannot edit this. I will not give you editor status. You can only view it. Now, if you want this sheet or any of the other spreadsheets I've done, what you have to do is you have to go to File, and then you have to download it. And you can download it into a PDF or an Excel or whatever you want. And then after that, you should be able to basically import it into a Google Sheet if you wanted to use Google Sheets to do it. But that's how you do it. So you really just hit File, Download, and you'd probably download it to an Excel sheet, and then you'd use an Excel application to edit it yourself. But I keep getting people asking if they can edit it, and the answer is no, you cannot edit this. That would make a public edit, and no, you cannot do that. I will not let you do that. So, but you can view it, and then if you want to edit it, you just go to File, Download, and then download it to an Excel sheet, and then use Microsoft Excel to edit it however you want in a non-public manner. Okay, so that's how you do that, and you can do that with all of the other spreadsheets and everything else I've done in the past. You just hit File, Download, and then download it to an Excel spreadsheet or whatever, and then you can edit it then. Okay, but that will do it for this episode. If you are interested in truck driving, there's a link in the comment section down below. You click that link, fill out your information, and Driver Recruiter will get a hold of you. And of course, if you are interested in this spreadsheet or any of the other spreadsheets I've done in the past, they are available in the About section. You can click on them, hit File, hit Download, and then you can download them and use them however you want. That'll do it for this episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.